Please welcome Tony Brown, AFCEA Space Coast President and Founder, and Director, Products and Software Division at TM3 Solutions.
Wow. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I'm going to go into the human factor first. I kicked my toe on the bed this morning because I was so nervous. We had a fire drill, and when I was talking to one of my panelists, I spilled water on my keyboard. So that's how my morning has started. Really appreciate everyone coming. Let's see, next, the slide I'd like to have up. I want to thank Space Force, and I think we need to give Space Force like a round of applause. 5 years, and they've gotten to where they've gotten right now. And we are so excited to be working with them. So if everybody doesn't mind, please give them a round of applause. It's an honor, one, to be the president of the Space Coast Chapter and founder. I came down to Florida 10 years ago, looked at the ecosystem. We had COVID and other scenarios like that. I ended up coming from Washington, D.C. area, the DMV, got down here, kind of couldn't figure the lay of the land, started to doing some work with the AFCEA chapter in Tampa, which was big in the combatant commands and the SOCOM guys, so I had to grow a beard and leave a little gray in there in order to get some street cred with them. And then I got tired of driving down I-4. This is the actual story of how all of this got started. Always been interested in space as a kid, and then finally started going to the Canaveral region, asking folks if they've heard of AFCEA or they would be interested in a chapter starting there. A year ago, everybody that I talked to said, I haven't heard of AFCEA. What's AFCEA? What is AFCEA? The way that I look at it is it's an international organization with several chapters throughout the world. We are the 139th chapter. I like that, 139th. And we have the 140th chapter that started after that, which is Orlando. And Courtney Powell is somewhere in the audience. I look at it as a group, or organization that collaborates with state and local governments, the federal community, and also industry partners to try to have this collective dialogue. We consider ourselves thought leaders within AFCEA, with our leadership and members. So to create an ecosystem, and one of my favorite words is collaboration. I learned that in DC. Even though we don't always follow collaboration, all the groups are there that can start to have these conversations. So when I got in this community down here with space, I looked at it was just growing so fast. So how could we put the pieces together in order to have a cohesive organization? AFCEA used to be considered the Armed Forces Communications and Electronics Association. Kind of got away from that word to expand it outside of armed forces into other arenas. Also, a lot of emphasis on STEM, scholarships, and the next generation workforce. I think I put that all there. Within our chapter, we've held several events to help small business and large businesses. Also, we've actually done our first scholarships. So really excited about that. We're working with STEM programs. We have actively talked to command over at Space Force and other locations and have gone through, like, not lunch and learns yet, but we're going to that, but military appreciation luncheons. We've had multiple events to support not only their airmen and guardians, but other folks in the military. If you don't mind going to the next slide, please. I'd like to thank our sponsors, which certainly have kept us afloat these days. We are looking for other sponsors, but our sponsors have been integral into making a lot of this happen. Next slide. Also, Our founding sponsors, Dark Wolf, NewSat, and TM3, we were literally pulling money out of our own pockets in order to get this started. So definitely would like to thank them. And also the event, I mean, just the SpaceCom team, Space Congress team has been just amazing about listening to our ideas and trying to get this platform in place. And also Women in Defense, we've also done shows with them and technology events. One more slide, I think. Do we have? Okay, so I'm ready for our panelists. I'll start when they come up. So Mark Bontrager, whenever you're ready, Mark. We have Gabe Cantu and Teel. Thank you. Thanks. Here we go. Thank you. It's showtime now.
We're here.
You heard my story, how I kicked myself this morning. I actually think I almost drew blood. But then when the fire alarm came off, I just really kind of set the tone for this explosive committee that we have. So if you don't mind, I'll start with Diana, if you can kind of give your little bio and your scenario. And I didn't mean little, because it's pretty long and impressive.
So if I go long, just give me the look, or the sign, I should say. So I'm Diana Teel, and as it says, I am one of the co-founders of the Central Florida Tech Grove. The uniqueness of the Tech Grove is it's the only innovation hub that I know of in the nation that brings together all 5 services to provide some innovative ideas. So what the Tech Grove does is it allows the government, the military, all 5 services to come to the Tech Grove and say, here are our problems, not requirements, but problems. And then it allows the Tech Grove staff to be able to find those innovators, those problem solvers, large industry, small, academia, the startup, whoever, to help them solve the problems through things like prize challenges or tech talks or credas or all sorts of different avenues that then go to OTAs, other transaction authorities. So I think that's a good synopsis.
It's a great synopsis. I look at it as a bigger ecosystem than that. And so we are going to have to get back to that, because in a nutshell, we would like to, and I have to use this word lightly, and it's not secret anymore, so I think I can let it out because I've spoke about it. We want to do a Space Grove here.
Right.
If that, in fact, works for the community down here.
Yes.
And folks that I've talked to think that it's a great idea. So if you don't mind, since Mark, you're in Florida, we'll let you introduce yourself.
Good, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Mark Bontrager, I'm the Technical Director for Space Systems Command, Assured Access to Space. Very simply, our team procures all the launch vehicles that we see lift off the Space Coast frequently. As a matter of fact, there's one tonight at 8:34 p.m. There was one last night, if I remember correctly. So, and so I had the privilege of serving with the Space Force since 2021. Prior to that, I was with Space Florida for 13 years and had the privilege of playing a role in helping attract Starcom to Central Florida and helping them get established. So looking forward to this dialogue. Thanks, Tony.
And it's funny, speaking of Starcom, Gabe, I guess we go to you next.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tony. And thank you, everyone. Thank you for this invite as well. We're happy to be a part of this event, Mr. Brown. My name is Gabe Cantu. I go by my middle name. My first name is Sidiaco. It's hard to pronounce, but I'm the Director of Business Operations at Starcom, which is currently headquartered at Colorado Springs, and we're actively working to transition for the headquarters function here to Patrick. We're excited about being a part of this inaugural event because we have a core acquisition need, and it's imperative that we stand it up quickly and that we move quickly. And I'm happy to explain what that is on behalf of Starcom. So thank you.
Okay.
Oh, you did say to introduce myself. I'm a professional inquirer. I started my career as a second lieutenant at Electronic Systems Centers, doing advanced S&T, R&D, pushing the envelope on ISR technologies, and then I worked at SSC as well, doing mission system sustainment, all kinds of stuff. So I've got a wide and broad and deep experience with acquisitions. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And one other thing I want to say, you either have something worked out with Google or the search engines, because when I was looking for your name, I couldn't find anything about you until you actually sent me the bio. So
Okay.
we can talk about that another time. But yeah.
I think that comes from my experience with the high side efforts. I fly under the radar.
I didn't go any further on that, right? So with our chapter and with the community down here, there's a lot of engagement, and everybody's really excited about all of the things going down, with Space Coast. I mean, certainly, Mark, as you mentioned, I mean, there's a launch all the time. I have the app. I used to try to follow or go look at every launch on the beach, and I can't do that anymore because it just happens so much. And then if there's one scrub, it comes up again. So there's so much activity with the Space Coast region. And I think everything's happening so fast. Yep. And we also, and Diana's, the conversations that we've had, we really want industry and to be able to have that communication. So I was talking to Walt Jackham, and everybody wants a meeting with the general and all that kind of, and he's like, that's not really the way this should go. And so when I talked to Diana and thinking about what Mr. Jackham said, we're looking to create that ecosystem of collaboration. Certainly we want to stay ahead of our adversaries. We want industry to be able to support all the infrastructure that you all have there. So when everyone says, what is this meeting about? Or, this first inaugural part, and Gabe, part of that is also with this conference, we have everybody in one place.
Absolutely.
So we're hoping to expand where we have maybe folks from Huntsville, Vandenberg, and all of that under one roof, where we can kind of talk about acquisition strategy. So our industry partners can come back and say, they're not asking for those high-level meetings. They're saying, oh, you all have already given us the solutions. Now we can start to come back with solutions that you all want to hear about. So that's the purpose of the whole kind of vision we have.
Right.
I'd like to know, what do you both think about that?
So if you wouldn't mind.
Please.
Start. Yeah. One of the things that I'll announce today is that we know that we can't be successful within Starcom unless we're closely partnered with our industry partners, and that goes for the systems that we're developing through SSC and the professional services that we're garnering through different contract mechanisms. Right. What's important to us is to be transparent and to be collaborative and to establish those partnerships quickly. And I can proudly and enthusiastically announce that we're actually standing up a dedicated enterprise sourcing office to get after that. And we're resourcing it with the right personnel who have the background and experience needed to move quickly. I can see how industry can get frustrated because from their perspective, they put a lot of time and effort into their business. A lot of times they don't know who to contact, who to interface with, or who to follow up with. That's something that we're going to help them with. Right. One of the things that we did was we're integrated with the SSC front door, and we're actually building out a very specific page for Starcom, because Starcom has its own mission areas that we're after. So that's there to help us build out our industry engagement capability. And if you see me walking around the hallways, reach out to me. I've got a QR code you can tap into. But we're trying to help strengthen our industry capability engagement. Because that's the way we succeed. That's the way we succeed. And if you look at the current construct and the makeup of the organization, we probably have more industry partners supporting our day-to-day mission today, and that's going to grow. It's definitely going to grow. So.
Yeah, thanks. I caught a lot of things there. and I think outside of the box sometimes, but I like if you want to get in touch with me, the QR code part, but we'll talk about that one later too.
Fantastic.
I'm going to get with you in a second. Diana, no, I'm going to let you go first, Mark. Sorry about that.
I'm going to kick it over to you here. So, Tony, you're right. There's an excitement, and these people live it every day on the Space Coast. I mean, 93 launches from the Cape last year, 51 launches from Vandenberg on the west coast of the United States in California last year, 144 total launches. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens because there's a demand for stuff on orbit that we need to go meet. And in the National Security Space Launch Enterprise, many of those launches we helped enable to happen. So whether it's the spaceport side of the equation, the Eastern Range or the Western Range, we played a role in enabling those ranges to support that. I think as we look to the future, what we're structuring our acquisition strategies to kind of get after what you were saying there, Tony, is there is creativity and innovation on the commercial side of our business that we absolutely have to tap into. From a military service perspective, our adversary is moving faster than we can imagine. The only way that we can win this is to tap into the brilliance of the commercial sector. So by law, we buy commercial launch services. It's exactly how we're structured to do it, and we do that quite well. We are in the process of moving to a next phase of our acquisition strategy called Phase 3. It has 2 lanes to it, and I get into that detail a little bit later, because we know that the only way for us to continue to win in this competitive global environment is to enable U.S. commercial industry to bring the creativity and the innovation that they just do anyway.
Okay, all right. So much said there. So before I give it to you, there's something I want to ask, and it troubles me at night sometimes, and there's not very many things that trouble me at night. So, one, would I be right in saying that our adversaries can be a little bit more nimble than we can because of the regulations and oversight that we have on scenarios? Would you say that's a...
I would say that in the West, we value human life in a way that doesn't appear to be as important in that sector. They have inland launch sites, so they launch over people. Both in the Chinese and Russian component of things. So there is a difference in how we approach the problem, and the creativity and the singular focus that those types of governmental systems are able to bring can appear to move faster. I think that's what the great power competition is about. It is the West versus a different way of solving a problem. And I still believe the West has the best way of doing it, but we'll see how this plays out.
Now, I think that question seems like I went off base a little bit. Good. But Gabe mentioned something. And you mentioned, and I've had some experience with it, and I've actually talked to folks there, and actually am working with something with SpaceWorks right now. Front door and those type of scenarios. Mark, just like you said, these are scenarios that can help us stay ahead of the game, correct? If I'm correct. And if, when I look at this, Diana, that's why I wanted to get back to you, this Space Grove scenario would actually address those issues, correct?
Correct.
So as you're such a visionary, can we speak to how we could look at Space Grove and what we would need from industry partners and also the government?
Yes.
Is that fair?
If I can talk about my experience with standing up this Central Florida Tech Grove, because, I'm not going to pretend to be somebody or something I'm not. I really don't know that much about space. I live at Cape Canaveral, so I know there's a lot of rockets going up. I can tell you that.
Up in the middle of the night all
Exactly.
the time. I've gotten used to it now. I can sleep through it sometimes. But yeah, so I do know about that. But from what we were able to accomplish and why we were able to accomplish, I think is the interesting thing and where we could possibly benefit this community. So the need to go fast, right? The industry is the government's partner. I worked for the DoD for over 30 years, and I was an acquisition professional. So I started there, and then I became outreach director and doing some of the things, and I like to call it crazy because it was stuff that wasn't normally done within the DoD. And when I'm talking to my DoD colleagues, a lot of times, it was crazy what I was doing. So it was because we wanted to have conversations with our industry members, and it wasn't a one and done. We knew that when we went to an IPB or whatever, a conference or whatever it was, we would have that one conversation with that industry member if they were able to snag the program manager or the contracting officer and get the right person. And then industry is trying to get on their schedule. And then it's not a 15-minute conversation when industry gets on their schedule. It's 30 minutes to an hour because you have to say the niceties and then you have to, but so we decided, my goal was, when I was doing outreach, was once a month, have a non-program specific touch point with industry and bringing in our program managers, our contracting officers, our senior leaders, people that industry wanted to talk to in different various ways. And I think that's what y'all are getting at, right? Going fast and having those conversations. We felt, and I think that the Team Orlando and the commands over there have the metrics to prove that by having those relationships, we were able to go faster. I know when we started some of it, and I'll give this little anecdote because it's one of my favorites, when we started this thing we called PALT, Program Administrative Lead Time Meeting. And it was where we would get together with industry and we say, all of the program managers came in, contracting officers, senior leaders, and said, this is what we told you our long-range acquisition forecast is, but life has changed and now it's this. And so we would have that conversation. Our program managers started out like this. And they would answer questions, yes, no. And so then it was like, no, we have to have conversations. And we went through some coaching of what that looks like. Those same program managers now say that the PALT, they absolutely love it, that it's one of the most beneficial things to their acquisition strategies, that they're able to get information in a meaningful way, and that when there's a real dialogue. The program managers stay around after the meetings to have those one-on-one conversations, and then they're not being inundated with those phone calls if industry can figure out their phone numbers and things like that. Does that help, Tony?
That does help. That really does help. And once, I don't like to say when people get it, but once they get it, right, it does become this collaborative environment where they do see the value of those types of events, and you can do it all at one time. And like you said, you're not inundated by all of these emails.
Right.
What? And so back to a couple of other things. We want to bring in the academia component, okay? What's your thought process on how academia helps that? And Gabe, I'll let you speak to that because you're further away from us.
Okay. No, that's a great question, Tony. With regards to academia, right? So we want to do the same thing that we would with other systems, weapon systems. We want to establish a good working relationship. We want to build upon the university partnership program that we have and add others. There's training and educational programs that we have within Deltas 1 and 13 that are going to continue to grow as well. There's other new programs that we're establishing in support of training guardians to make them combat credible, but well-rounded space professionals. And we know there's universities out there already who have great STEM programs or space-related programs, and some of them are investing in small mission ops types of support training infrastructures that we could leverage. So again, we're not looking to carry the brunt of the work. We're looking to see what industry partners, private companies, universities, what they're doing, and grow that relationship. So I wanted to get back to a comment that she had made about having, and what this forum actually represents. I know over the last few decades that I've worked in this environment, one of the things that's always been beneficial is to have open and transparent and continuing forums for communication. Right. Mm-hmm. Because it can be very, very frustrating for an industry partner to figure out who do I talk to. You know, a lot of times I hear, why does it take so long? And we don't foster that collaboration spirit enough. And this is why I think this forum and future forums, hopefully, are going to be very, very beneficial to reducing that lead time associated with, I have something that I need from here, and I think I can get it from there. We're going to shorten that. But these types of events really, really do help. So hopefully I answered your question.
You did.
With regards to universities.
And I like the way that when these questions do come up, you do expand on it in a number of ways that would help industry. I'm just so impressed, with all of the panelists that urge to work with industry. And like you said earlier, Diana, at one point it was, right?
Tony, let me pile on this a little bit, because what I've watched over the years is this industry can be very rocket science focused in the launch enterprise, right? So what do you need for rocket science? Engineers, program managers. But as this whole thing has become more commercial, I'm always going to need rocket scientists, right? But I'm going to need accountants, I'm going to need attorneys, I'm going to need marketing people, I'm going to need all other elements because it's a commercial endeavor, no longer just a government-only thing, And so I think that's really important to recognize. The educational enterprise can engage in the space transportation domain in ways that it's not just the rocket science piece of the equation. So I think that's a real important piece. I just wanted to highlight something else that I think Diana was hitting on, is this collaborative kind of constant chatter between government and industry. And she hit on it really well. It makes government better. I have watched this time and time again on the spaceport, where SpaceX, for example, or United Launch Alliance will be like, hey, listen, I'm using this tool to be able to decide when I'm ready to launch. And you're using this thing that was built 15 years ago that you hate using it, right? How about you use my tool? And we'll be like, okay, we got to run through some checks, but now we're using their tool and we're better for it. And it helps us get better and iterate faster, and everybody wins. Because at the end of the day, we need that capacity on orbit as soon as we possibly can get it. So if they can move faster, we get a benefit faster. We share that end. It's very powerful.
So it's funny you say that, because, and Diana, I don't think we've mentioned this, but I'm kind of letting out a little bit of dirty laundry here. But I won't go that deep. Like, this ecosystem, and we had actually talked about the possibility of a physical location, right? And so you want to know the biggest challenge is
getting a physical location.
Is the physical location, because at Patrick, and then you talk about the Cape, it's like Washington and Baltimore. Even though they're closer, no one's going up to Baltimore on rush hour or even thinking about it, and no one's coming down to Patrick, right? And so I love what you said about ULA saying, hey, right? And so this is something we had talked about even when we were trying to plan out a physical scenario, how we can help commercial entities and NASA and Space Force all have this ecosystem where we could all collaborate.
One of the lessons learned that we have, I was also the director of Team Orlando for a number of years, which that's bringing in all 5 services in the modeling, simulation, training, human performance business space. So all co-located on UCF campus, basically at not TSD or NSA Orlando. So bringing all of the commands together is it's tough, right? Like, because everybody's got their own thing. But one of the things was, we knew by being on the same campus in that we basically tripped on each other, right? Like, you're going down the hall and sometimes you don't know if you're Army or Navy or Air, and you're just talking about your problems and what that is, that there was collaboration that happened. But when one of those commands would have people that was not co-located there, that it wasn't the same kind of synergies. So we actually had like FLETC, Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, that they put somebody on our campus and they were able to get great gains from what we were doing just by being a part of it. As soon as they took that person out, radio silence, right? It just didn't happen. So going back to the physical space, it's absolutely necessary, I think, in getting to what you're talking about, Gabe, with that collaboration and going fast and how we're going to do that, and that it is beneficial to both parties, because industry, it's hard, I know, to come into the government, even though we think we're open and you can just come and talk to us and we've got these websites. And it's hard for the government to be able to make the reach out, because their email is long with all of the things that are going on. So having that physical space, I think, is imperative. Sorry.
I would agree with that. And Gabe can talk for a minute about what you have in Colorado Springs.
Yeah.
That I know you're hopeful we'll get rebuilt down here.
Yeah.
But when you get the private developer brain starting to engage in creating a space, right? The government serves best as a customer. Let me write a check for something that I need, okay? Government doesn't always work well as a partner, except maybe with other government agencies, like has worked well with the Team Orlando enterprise, right? So when you get somebody that's willing to take some risk early in the equation, whether it's a real estate developer or something, and create an environment, a physical environment that is helpful for that collaboration to happen, government usually finds a way to write checks to go make that happen, because they need that. Gabe, I'll hand it over to you, because you guys have one of those in Colorado Springs that's really pretty powerful, and I do hope that something matures down here to your benefit.
No, absolutely. So I will say this, and maybe it's not the norm, but I have seen efforts move really, really quick. So it's possible, right? It's very, very possible if you've got the right team, the right environment, the right emphasis and the priority placed upon what's needed. Efforts can actually move very, very quickly, and a lot of times industry partners are very frustrated because like, well, why didn't this move quickly? There's mechanisms to actually move very, very quickly. One of the components to that has to do with having just the right skill set internal to that organization to be able to execute quickly. That's something that I'm building out for our organization, and we're literally in the process of doing that right now. So in terms of what Starcom needs from industry, we need everything, right? We've got training and education, right? We've got wargaming, we've got doctrine, we've got tests. We're the Independent Operational Test Authority, so we're testing all these systems. We've got the systems that we're building out for the National Space Test and Training Center under the Operational Test and Training Infrastructure. They've got, the CSO came out with his strategic requirements document. He said, I see what we have here today. We need to get it all improved. We're going to improve everything, the infrastructure, the digital training environment, the backbone, the data structure, the network structure, everything there. So when industry is looking at Starcom, we have a good number of defense contractors that are already supporting us, but there's others out there that are wondering, how do we get in here? How do we help, right? Like I mentioned before, the gateway, sort of the entry right now is the SSC front door. We're going to expand upon that. We're going to socialize that. We're going to do more marketing as well. And like Mark alluded to earlier, we're actively in the process of transitioning the headquarters function here to Patrick, and we're gonna grow relationships. With the folks that are out there, and we're gonna move quickly. It's possible to move quickly. I've done it in my career. I've seen it done, but there's key elements that are required. And one of them is constant collaboration, communication. Forums like this, Tony, which we're gonna be involved with, will help. Because there's no need to take forever. If we've got units who are doing testing evaluation and they identify a gap in some sort of capability, right, or through the wargaming exercises, the space flags, we want to move quickly, right? And so we've got industry partners who have the technology, they have the know-how, they have the background that can say, I can give you this quickly, and that's where we're headed. And we have the know-how, we have the creativity. I've sat with some think tanks in the past where we're better than the adversary, and they don't scare me because I know what we have. So and we're gonna get after it. So hopefully I answered the question. If not, I can reattack.
Every question goes on to another area where what actually really expands on to, and so. Something that you said, and I love this because I don't always hear this, that you said, we're better than the adversary. We have all, right? So we want to make sure that we create those ecosystems. And I'm going to say something, and I'm going back on a limb because I've been asking you all so many questions. I'm saying to the audience, right? The government has put a lot of systems in place for those communication topics or scenarios. When industry comes back and asks, and I'm going to put us out on a limb, questions that they should have done their homework beforehand. Industry, I'm saying this to you, don't waste your time doing that. Figure out what's going on, watch those videos on, there's videos on, not Front Door, but on some of the what is it called? AFWorks and SpaceWorks, right? The
Absolutely.
challenges, the tech challenges. Even though the tech challenge might not apply to you, it has so much content in it to the goals and missions, right? So make sure you do a lot of that homework beforehand so you understand where Space Force and where Starcom, any customer you have, so you can understand that, so you can come back with solutions. The things that keep me up at night is when I read those and I go, oh, what if?
Yeah.
And that's what you all want to hear, correct?
Yeah, the amount of information that's available on YouTube today can really prepare anybody to better engage the government. 10 years ago, it wasn't like that. It was difficult. And even I struggled to think, well, how do we do business? But today, what we have in terms of social media and the outreach and the marketing and the public affairs, there's enough information out there to kind of prep small businesses. We do a lot of business with small businesses. And even, I'd even encourage small businesses to reach out to some of the larger primes as well, because there's partnering going on there that can make it easier for those small companies to be able to bring to bear the capabilities that we need. And so, but yeah, we're in a different environment, and there's no excuse for not moving fast. Really, there really isn't. So.
Yeah, and Gabe, to what you're saying, and I'm one of the big takeaways that I really admire that you said is that we're better.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's just definitely, Diana goes back to setting up the ecosystem that we discussed, and Mark, the academia part of it. So when you start to bring the industry partners in, large and small, because large, we always talk about turning a aircraft carrier, which I haven't done much work with the Navy, so I don't know how hard it is to turn an aircraft carrier, but I imagine it must be pretty hard. But then you have a small, which is very nimble, probably can act like a rib at times and go wherever. And then we have now with the drones and all these other kind of scenarios, I think we're just so agile right now with our capabilities. And I want to make sure that goes over to you all with solutions within the ecosystems that you all need.
So, and I think with having the innovation hubs like the Works and different things in the Tech Grove and things like that, what that allows are the innovators to come in. So you talk about industry, right, being small businesses and large, but then we've got the innovators out there that think very creatively and very differently. And they're just seeing, like I know when I was at the Tech Grove, there was a lot of students that would come in and they would have possible solutions, but really weren't sure what to do with it or if it was really viable or what was going on. And they would participate in some of the prize challenges and the pitch competitions and things like that. And they got real feedback from government experts, people that were in the labs that most industry never gets to talk to, right? Because they're in there creating a lot of really good technology. And so that really helped I think the ecosystem with bringing in some creativity and different problem solvers, people that think differently than our larges and our DoD and even some of our smalls, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. So something that you said, Mark, and I'm going back to it again. In our competitive world of industry partners, we always have the best solution, right?
Here.
Right. So, and I'm going back to the ULA situation, what you said, okay? And now, Gabe, going back to, we have the best, we're better than our adversaries. Now I'm going back to industry and saying, hey, I had a OEM I was talking to one day, and he's former Army. And when I say former Army, and I think about you saying about the folks going in the hallways and not knowing who was who, because if you get all them bantering with each other, the joking is going to be so long between all the forces, it's going to take a while. But, and getting back to what you're saying, Former Army guy, he says to me, he says, I don't care if you get my solution or not. I want the best solution for what would work. And I will actually give you my competitor's number if it's the best solution for. And back to the ecosystems that we discussed, if we can get in the room with academia and we have these problem sets. So I'm going to do a little exercise here, okay? And by the way, this is all off the grid. I see my vision for what this looks like. And this isn't my vision, but from what I've heard from industry, and I've heard from like Walt, some things that he said, you know, like we don't really, we have time to meet with industry, but when we do have time to meet with you, like if it's during one of these shows or one of these scenarios or like front door, like use those. Like we're giving industry what we don't have time for these one-off meetings and all of this. So I'm seeing this collaborative ecosystem, which could be a physical location where I'm seeing, just like you said, Diana, folks are hanging out. We're looking at problems. We're having these little tech sessions and all of that, right? Government might come in, they might send representatives every day. It could be folks sitting in all the time, full time, whatever the scenario is. People are stopping by like, hey, we got this problem. Let's try to figure it out. That's the way I see this. And I don't see you getting a whole bunch of emails. I don't see everybody wanting to meet with you every single day.
Right.
That's the way I see this ecosystem. And then we're coming back with these solutions and you all are saying, wow, OTAs, CRADAs, all of those non-FAR-based scenarios, they give us the speed of the commercial environment.
You know, there's a great example we're in the middle of right now. So we on the Space Force have a need for payload processing. Before you put a satellite on top of a rocket, you've got to process it, fuel it, get it ready to fly, then put it on top of a rocket. There are so many satellites coming to both the Space Coast and to the Vandenberg team that we do not have enough capacity. Congress says, hey, how about I throw money at this? We're like, you could give me all the money you want, and then given the processes where I have to acquire buildings called MILCON, I'll never get there in time. Military construction machine is a very powerful machine. It does what it does in its timeline, right?
Yes.
So we, Congress did a congressional ad of $80 million and gave us the flexibility on how we wanted to acquire it. So we put out, through the appropriate authorities, what's called a commercial solutions offering. We said, hey, industry, here's our need. Bring me a solution. And I've got this much to contribute to the mix. And we're in the process of finalizing that source selection in less than, probably all in, it'll be about 6 months, which is light speed given our DNA, right? And so that kind of opportunity can continue to go where we seed something. We have seen that in the space business big time. The idea of landing rockets, if you'd asked me 15 years ago, we're going to start reusing rockets, I'd say you're crazy. That'll never happen. We've been throwing rockets away for the last 50 years and we're going to keep doing it. And then Elon, on his own dime, leaned forward as a commercial player and took risk in a domain and showed that it can be done. Now, we're like, of course you're going to reuse rockets, right? And we're moved past that. That happens in every other commercial industry. You advance and you advance and you take risk and advance. And we're just seeing it in the space industry now. It's really fun.
So you would like to see that this, if I can expand on what I just mentioned, this ecosystem foster those types
Absolutely.
of things.
It's the beauty of the American entrepreneurial system. I always felt like when the shuttle flew out, 8,000 jobs went away overnight on the Space Coast. We lived it. It was brutal, right? At the same time as the economy was collapsing in Florida, took it in the shorts because it's a service-oriented state, right? But I always felt like if we can just empower the American entrepreneurial spirit, which we can do and do every day in every other sector, we will lead the world in this domain, and it's looking good.
Yeah, no, I'm a pure advocate of moving quickly. You know, on the OTT&I side, they went out with a CSO, commercial solutions offerings, I think to look for higher fidelity 1 meter telescopes, you know, in support of the SDA. mission. We're entertaining things such as other transactional authorities to be able to move quickly for SIBRs and SITRs and rapid prototyping. But not just that, I mean, even with the training and education instructional programs that we put together to get the Guardians ready, we're looking to move quickly. We really, really are. And so the imperative is there, the need is there, the support is there. And this goes all the way up to the PEO and the CSO with his strategic requirements document that says we need to move quickly. So I'm excited. I'm actually very, very excited. Yeah.
Okay, so now, how do you see that scenario looking as a...
I think it's everything that we've been talking about. I think that for me it's exciting because there's so much support, right, from the government and then industry, academia. I love it when you can bring in different thought, people that think differently. So let me go back to one of the fun things that we've done. We would bring in industry, academia, and government to talk about a topic, a mission space. And I think that this would be fun here too. So one of the things that we talked about was AI and what we thought about it. So from a academia perspective, the academic was, I love AI. I trust AI with everything, with my life, with everything, right? And the DoD, the lab person, right, no, absolutely not. The human always has to have intervention. When we put them forward deploy, they always have to be able to override AI. And industry was kind of like, okay, in the middle, right, kind of trying to breach that gap. But to me, the interesting thing was to bring in the different people that think differently, and that was just an example of what we can do, right, with calling this Space Grove, and have different kinds of people that think differently to get to what y'all are talking about, and go fast. And how do we, there's going to be another Elon out there, right, that's going to come up with a great solution. And if we make this inviting space for them to want to come to and to share that, then maybe we can get to them a little bit quicker. And then working with the people in the lab, right? Because I've got a lot of friends that are in the labs, in the government, and they've got great ideas and they're doing great things. And there's an opportunity for the CRADAs, and then we can take a CRADA to an OTA, which is another wonderful opportunity for those smalls and innovators. So yes, I love all of it. I'm open to any questions and thoughts and anything.
So you went with the questions and thoughts before I had a chance
Sorry.
to say that, but we'll take
looking
that.
at your
So we're going to take, I guess we have enough time for maybe 4 questions. So I think we have partners around the room that if anyone has any questions, we'll take some. And by the way, this gives me my chance to practice on my dream scenario of being a White House press secretary. So I'll make sure we kind of do these questions the right way.
Oh, great.
Do you want to get at the podium and speak from there, Tony, like you're at the podium?
I would love it.
I'm Monty Greer from the Aerospace Corporation. My question is predominantly for Gabe, but how do we train like we're going to fight if we can't have space mobility and logistics? Is modeling and simulation enough?
No, it's not. So you want to have your modeling simulation mirror, that's one of the things that we're trying to get after on the OTT&I side, right? Is we're trying to build that digital ecosystem that mirrors the live operational system. So no, I don't think it's enough, right? So if you want an environment where you train the Guardians to be combat credible and combat ready, you need them to be training on systems that are realistic. In some situations, some scenarios, we have that capability, but not all the mission platforms are there today. So we've got to build that out, and that's being built out on the OTT&I side. So, Lonnie, did I answer your question?
Is Starcom an advocate, I guess, for on-orbit servicing capabilities in that mission area that enable us to train like we fight without using all the gas we've got or all the whatever that we brought on orbit with us to begin with?
What was the first part of your question?
Is Starcom an advocate for?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Starcom is an advocate. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, we have a tech consortium that's headed up by JHU, Applied Physics Lab, and aerospace is part of that, right? They're leading the charge. We're partnered up with MITRE, Georgia Tech, the FFRDCs that we have. So, no, absolutely. Starcom is an advocate of that. Absolutely. So, I see us moving in the right direction, right, to get after the CSO's imperative that we train the Guardians like we expect them to fight. So develop those systems so that they're realistic and live. Create that digital environment that mimics the live systems. Hopefully that makes sense for the non-technical folks.
Mark, did you have any input on that?
Space mobility is so foundational to what we heard at the space mobility piece from General Shaw. So I think we're all looking forward to the day when fuel is no longer a limiting factor on the performance of on-orbit systems. I'm hopeful it's going to happen faster than we can imagine, right? Because of some of where industry is pushing us to go with on-orbit fuel farms and things like that. So, yeah, we got to get there. Maneuver is foundational to kind of how we're going to have to operate in the future.
Thank you.
Hi, Carl Prushan, R3 Space Consulting. Question concerning OTTI. Have you all, I know with the stand-up of OTTI and the interaction with Starcom, there's a really tight partnership. There's a council of peers working together with the ops community. Where are you at in solidifying your budget for acquisitions like Nightstar and the acquisition strategies for those kind of programs? Part one. Part two is it only SSC that's funding that, or is Starcom also contributing to funding of those programs?
So with regards to Nightstar, they're on schedule to award the contract. It's an IDIQ contract vehicle, and they're on schedule to award this year, calendar year 2025. It's a Starcom budget. And again, OTT&I is partnered closely with the operational community, with SPOC, and of course with us as the lead command for defining requirements, and working very closely with the system developers at SSC under the PEO, Colonel Corey Klopstein and his team and his army of material leaders that know what they're doing to get after just really revolutionizing and making that test training environment more robust the way it needs to be. So the budget's there, the budget's going to continue to grow, and we're looking forward to the future, really. And the future is actually very close, very, very close. So it's exciting.
Hey, Gabe, one real quick question. I know we kind of touched on front door and the SpaceWorks kind of AFWorks scenario. Do you mind sharing that with the audience, or do I have to have somebody from one of those organizations come aboard? Or can you be the quasi-spokesperson right now?
Well, I won't be the spokesperson for AFWorks per se, but we do know who they are. They're very close to the headquarters, and we've worked with them, we've partnered with them. But with regards to SSC's front door, it's a great tool. It's user-friendly. It's easy. If you're a vendor and you're not signed up with the SSC front door, you're making a big mistake. It's find the SSC front door. Eventually there's going to be a Starcom front door that's very specific to Starcom's mission areas. But we're in there now. And so we use it as a tool to help manage industry engagement, to baseline who we're vetting, who we're meeting with, who we're researching, and who we're making connections with. Literally, when you go in and you register and you put in your company's profile and the information, the capabilities that you have, we literally use that information to connect you to a potential requirement owner who can say, you know what, I want to talk to those guys. Let me go pull on that thread a little bit. So if you're not on the SSC front door, you're doing your business a disservice. So please look it up. It's very simple and easy to use. So.
You did very well at advocating.
Okay. Well, it helps me too.
I know it does, and I'm a very big advocate of them. I talked to them last year.
Oh, wonderful.
And I was so impressed at how open they were. One of the stakeholders said to me they were like, if you send an email, it's going to get answered.
Yeah.
And that was great. You don't hear that from Never mind, I won't say it. You don't hear that from anyone these days, so I just thought that was great. Next question.
Hi, good afternoon. Jorge Narvaez with Airbus. My question is for the young lady at the end there. With regard to you working at UCF and with all of the branches, are there opportunities that you're working across the U.S., working with other universities, and is there an open invitation to industry to attend these as well?
Okay. So I no longer work there. I'm co-founder of the Tech Group. Let me just be real clear about that. I'm not misrepresenting. So I was a co-founder, and I worked for the Navy when I was doing that. And yes, UCF Research Foundation was our partner. The Tech Grove is working primarily with University of Central Florida Research Foundation. I do know that there's universities across the nation that are working with other innovation hubs, and I do know that the Tech Grove has an open invitation for industry always to be at their events, and most of them are free. There's very few that I think there's one that I can think of that there was a cost involved. So there is an open invitation. Did I answer that question? Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think one more question.
Okay, thank you. This is Monali. I work for Blue Origin. I joined them last year, but before that for 25 years, I'm from Cupertino, so really at the forefront of technology, software, all of that. My biggest dilemma is when I joined Blue, I realized everything that we work on is from 1960s. So I'm biased about software. I've worked on things that are very new to a lot of people in aerospace. But at the same time, even the parachute system, where the 3 parachutes come down with the crew capsule, was developed in 1960s. And I'm a skydiver. I actually went to Houston, Texas, did skydiving license to learn how parachutes work. And I realized that there is no innovation conversation. I'm talking to a person who have worked on it for 7 years at Blue. And I'm realizing, as I'm talking to people, this is my first time at SpaceCom, you talked about payload processing as a need. There are a lot of needs that everyone has, like hundreds of millions of dollars funding for, but I also heard at the same breath, people talk about different ways of and how they need to be integrated. But I haven't come across a program with the right amount of funding to cross-collaborate. If somebody leaves a job from like different altitudes, each one of them have a completely different software stack, completely different hardware. And I made a list of all that, and I'm like, oh my God, each of these can be $100 billion company if you work with Stanford Ventures. So that's a long description of the dilemma that I'm facing. That do we have any programs that are really for advancing the innovation, but also integrating these? Because people talk about the problem, but I hear that the funding is all about each of the missions, like payload processing, launch, re-entry. They're like so separate from each other.
That's a great question.
That is a
great question. And I would describe it like this. The rocket launch business, I hate to say it, is still a relatively immature industry. In the sense, if you look at the volume of what we push through in the rocket business, as you well know, it's really small compared to the volume in other domains, right? Not only that, this industry, and I watched it as I left government, went to work with the state of Florida, and saw other industries and how they were just moving out, and we were crawling along, right? The other piece of it is it evolved out of government. 50 years ago, the only reason we launched a rocket was because the government needed to launch a rocket. That's why the NASA and Space Force operate the ranges, because nobody else wanted to. Nobody had the mission need to go do it. So I would argue that what you've seen before in other domains was there because there was a market pull for it. Right. And we're not seeing that yet. I do believe that's going to go there as we become an interplanetary species and all the things that are going to happen. That transition's going to play out. So our effort in the short term, as frustrating as it might be, is how do I set the conditions now for that kind of collaborative kind of dynamic that you were talking about that you saw in those other places? That's my short answer to that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that, because it's amazing how I did something the other day. I'm big into boating, And I thought of how many years we've been exploring the oceans in humankind. Okay, it's almost 1,000 years, right? How long is this? 60, 70 years? We're nowhere.
Right.
With a far more expansive.
Although our boats have gotten dramatically better in 60 years than they did back in the day.
And so have our rockets.
Exactly.
Just like you said, we would have never had any idea that the
speed at which we're changing is.
So we're moving at a very high rate of speed here. I'm almost disappointed when I see a launch and I don't see the boosters come back.
Roger.
It's disappointing to me, right? And now some of those boosters, are they up to like 8 or 9 times that they can be used?
They're above 20, maybe even 30. I'm looking at some of my friends in the audience if they know, but yeah, 20 to 30, at least SpaceX.
It's just amazing.
And the others will all get there. It's all good.
Yeah, it's amazing. So yes, so one more question? Okay.
Awesome.
I said 4.
Yeah, thanks. This is Nate Kirk from a company called Perry Labs, and this is a question I think for Mark. And by the way, I really appreciate that last question because I think it kind of ties in here. So I'm curious what your sense is of the value that's being derived from the SpaceWorks Digital Spaceport of the Future consortium of companies that were awarded SBIR Phase 2s last summer. And just to be open, we were one of them. But just, I don't know how much you're tied into that, and they haven't, done a ton of work yet, obviously. But just curious what your sense is. Are you hopeful? Are you skeptical? What do you think? Thanks.
That's a good question. I think what you're talking about is the SBIR effort. They called Digital Spaceport of the Future, and that was kicked off. And I wasn't directly involved in it in any way, but I've been watching it from a distance, and I'm very hopeful about it. It is what it is. Government, we tend to only see, and Diana was dealing with this all the time inside of the ecosystem she established, was that, like you said, the program managers up front were like, right? So we can't see. Those kind of creative efforts open up our eyes. Wow, what's in the art of the possible? Let's get some requirements written and go do it, right? So I'm very hopeful. It's got to, and the more public and transparent it is, the more it puts pressure on the bureaucracy to get out of the way to help it to happen. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Thank you for that, and great question. You're definitely using the tool. So this concludes the program. I'm afraid the eject chair is going to come out because we only have a few more seconds. So I wanted to bring Ryan Brown to the stage if he's around.
Here.
So Ryan, so we talked about this, getting this panel together. What was it? It was earlier this year.
It was, yeah.
Right, and so I want to thank you for just giving us the opportunity to have this experience and also hear what you think about what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, our mission at SpaceCom is to bring this community together and to foster collaboration between the DoD, civil space, and the commercial industry. So when Tony and Diana approached us with this idea, let's create a PALT session or let's create this acquisition panel. We want to create this ecosystem, is a word that Tony uses all the time, on the Space Coast. This was right up our alley. So for SpaceCom, this was a no-brainer. And I know we want to announce that this is the inaugural acquisition panel at SpaceCom here this year, but this is going to be an annual event that takes place moving forward every year, in addition to what you guys are doing on at AFCEA Space Coast.
We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
All right, thank you. And thank you everybody for attending. We really appreciate it.